Live from the BDN Studios, it's Bang and Dang.
That's awesome.
If you don't like that, then
You ain't black.
Welcome back to Battles of the American Civil War with your hosts, Bang and Dang, and we're moving on with another 4 battles. Maybe. And, one's pretty significant, I guess, if you consider Suffolk a significant battle. But then we got the Battle of Fort Bisland, Irish Bend, and Vermillion Bayou. As we move our way to Chancellorsville. And eventually Gettysburg. Well, Vicksburg's moving in, place in here as well.
Yeah, and the demise of stupid Stonewall.
Oh, that's common.
Well, I guess it kind of was his fault, but not really.
It's all their fault. They're all idiots. Yeah, before we get into that, we are currently shooting this episode on video, as we have been doing now for the last month or so now. And you can get that. Plus Outlaws and Gunslingers and This Week in Sports History over on our Patreon at patreon.com/bangdang. $2 a month. Ad-free video versions, plus at least 2 days early of the regular free podcast version.
At least.
Also go subscribe to our YouTube at Bang Dang Network 1, where you get a little podcast clips from this. And also our new darts series that we just started playing darts. And surprise, surprise, I'm whooping Dang's ass already. So
it's 21-18.
Whooping ass. So leave a review on Spotify or Apple. And comment, like, review, all that good stuff. Siege of Suffolk, also known as the Battle of Suffolk, took place from April 11th to May 4th, 1863, near Suffolk, Virginia. 1863. Lieutenant James Longstreet was placed in command of the Confederate Department of Virginia and North Carolina. He was given 4 objectives. Number 1, to protect Richmond. Number 2, give support to Robert E. Lee's Army of Northern Virginia, if and when needed. Number 3, forage and gather supplies for the Confederate armies, which we seen last episode, which he did at, I forget what battle name it was. But remember, he completed his objective because he was foraging and doing all that stuff. And number 4, to capture the Union Garrison at Suffolk, if possible. Longstreet had 3 divisions of troops from the Army of Northern Virginia and North Carolina.
All right. The Longstreet just can't get away from Lee.
No. Well, why would he want to?
All right. Major General John Peck of the Union commanded the Suffolk Garrison, which was part of Major General John Dix's Department of Virginia. The garrison was manned by 1 division under the 7th Corps, under Brigadier General Michael Corcoran. Once Longstreet approached, another division was borrowed from the 9th Corps, under George W. Getty, and a 3rd division was transferred from the Washington defenses. Rear Admiral Samuel P. Lee lent 2 flotillas from the North Atlantic Blockading Squadron for naval support. Oh, look at the Navy guys. Like, I guess we can do a little bit of help here, right? Peck organized the Suffolk defenses roughly into a large circle, ringing the city. Southwest front was led by Colonel Robert Sanford Foster. Southeast front was led by Brigadier General Charles Dodge. Southwest front was led by Brigadier General Henry Dwight Terry. Northeast front led by Colonel Arthur H. Dutton.
Oh, Dutton. Oh, man, the Dutton story goes back even further than we thought.
Dang!
Well, there was a Dutton in the war.
Corcoran supervised the southern fronts, and Getty supervised the northern fronts. River defenses were left to the Navy, obviously. Peck had a good natural defensive position with the Great Dismal Swamp, protecting the eastern flank, and then the Nansemond River protecting the western flank. Look at this guy. The 2 Navy flotillas were commanded by Lieutenant Roswell Lamson and Lieutenant William B. Cushing.
All right, well, Longstreet's forces moved against Suffolk on April 11th, crossed the Nansemond River, captured several pickets, and routed a cavalry regiment.
Oh.
However, General Peck quickly secured the garrison, and Confederate advance led by Brigadier General Micah Jenkins' brigade decided not to assault the garrison and instead entrenched on the west bank of the Nansemond. Peck felt that the southern fronts would be hit the hardest and withdrew most of the infantry from the river defenses for support, thus leaving the river almost entirely to the Navy.
Oh, shit.
Longstreet's forces did in fact strike the southern lines first. Major General George Pickett, his Confederate division probed Foster's and Dodge's fronts, driving in the Union picket lines. Confederate reconnaissance showed that the Union works to be too strong for a frontal attack. The next day, Foster sallied out and recaptured his lost picket lines. He's like, I'll take these back, thank you.
Yep.
For the next several days, Pickett tested Corcoran's lines, trying to find a weakness. He even sent scouting parties into the Dismal Swamp looking for a possible flanking route, but abandoned that idea.
Is this the first time we're hearing Pickett?
No, he's been at a few. Longstreet
He's about to be at Gettysburg doing some of them.
a failed charge.
Sad.
Or was this charge one of the few
Pickett?
Confederate
I think Pickett's was a good one.
up swings in that battle?
Yeah,
We'll
I
see.
think it was a good one.
Longstreet quickly realized any action on the southern front would be futile, and a flanking maneuver would have to be against the lightly defended river front. Action subsided on the southern front as the attention of both Peck and Longstreet moved to the north. 2nd Confederate Division under Major General John Bell Hood moved up and entrenched above and below Suffolk on the west bank. The Palestinians and Israelis. Hood's infantry picked at Lieutenant Lampson's upper river flotilla, which made for an easy target, but it was apparent that the infantry alone could not clear the river.
Well,
clearly not.
I mean, come on. To solve their problem on the upper Nansemond, the Confederates constructed batteries and an old Confederate fort in the lower reaches of the Nansemond and near to the Hampton Roads. Fort Huger, this became known as the Hills Point Battery, and a second battery at a bend in the river just below Suffolk, near a local farm owned by Norfleet family. The Norfleet family was like, hey, boys, we don't want you guys on my land. He's like, tough shit, bud. Cook us dinner and give me your lunch. Right. This battery was known as the Norfleet House Battery, obviously. April 14th, Lamson's sailors spotted fresh dirt on the river bluffs, telltale signs of the battery's construction.
Obviously.
This work was Norfleet House Battery, and Lamson's ships opened fire. The USS Mount Washington became grounded and was crippled in the attack. Wow. The Hills Point batteries also opened fire, trapping Lamson's flotilla between them. As the tide rose, USS Stepping Stones helped free the Mount Washington. The boats escaped, but proved the Navy alone could not protect the river, and began a feud between General Dix and Admiral Lee. They're like, you idiots. You dick.
Dicks.
Yeah, over the use of gunboats along the river. Dix insisted on their use, while Lee became skeptical of the safety of his boats on the river. He was like, you see what just happened?
Right.
Come on. Also, at this point, Peck realized the mistake of withdrawing the infantry from the river sector. General Getty was immediately charged with manning the river and constructing batteries for defense. Getty constructed Battery Morris and Battery Kimball on the east side of the river, directly across from the Norfleet House Battery.
How are they letting them construct it if it's just right across them?
Sure, there's a decently wide river, and there's little muskets ain't reaching that far unless they have artillery.
I would assume that's what a battery usually is.
April 15th, Getty opened fire after a 3-hour duel.
The Confederate guns were silenced, and this affair cost the Union Army. The Navy got 5 killed and 16 wounded and 1 missing.
Yeah, that's what happened. A 3-hour duel, the Confederate guns was silenced. This affair cost the Union Army and Navy 5 killed, 16 wounded, and 1 missing. Lamson and Cushing were informed the obstruction was no longer a threat. However, Lamson and Lee remained skeptical of the safety of the river. The argument between Dix and Lee grew worse and eventually reached the White House.
Oh, shit.
Damn. Army and Navy differences at the high command were countered by good cooperation on a lower level between Getty and Lamson.
The Army and Navy just cannot get along. What the hell, you guys? With the Norfleet House Battery silenced, the next major river obstacle was that near the old Fort Huger at Hills Point, where the western branch flowed into the Nansemond River. Getty's forces constructed Battery Stevens across the river. Lamson's sailors launched a night attack early on April 17th against Hills Point, but were driven off by Confederate pickets. Captain Hazard Stevens, son of the late General Isaac Stevens, Hazard, what a great name,
Right.
Of Getty's staff, proposed that any night attack against the battery would fail.
Oh.
Confederate forces in Hills Point included 5 guns manned by 59 artillerists under Captain Robert M. Striblin, Captain David Bozeman. Bozeman? Did he start Bozeman, Montana or whatever?
Maybe.
I bet.
Maybe.
He commanded 2 companies of the infantry support. After observing the Confederate battery from a tree across the river, Stevens and Getty decided upon 6 p.m. as the time of attack. Just enough daylight for the attackers to see, but not enough daylight for a counterattack.
Hey.
He said, we'll get in, punch these mother effers in the mouth, and they can't do nothing about it.
Right. of 19th of April, Lamson, Cushing, and Getty all opened fire on Hills Point. 5 p.m., Getty assembled 270 veteran troops and loaded them onto Lamson's stepping stones.
Ship.
Right. Covered in canvas to conceal the infantry. Getty personally led the troops with Lamson while Lamson directed the Navy and artillery. The plan called for the gunboats to steam downriver, attempting to trick the Confederates into thinking they were trying to run the fort.
Oh.
It was to land the infantry just above the fort. The infantry will then rush the flank and rear of the fort. It might be possible. The operation was running smoothly. 300 yards from the landing point, the canvas sides were dropped, revealing the infantry. With just 30 feet to go, the stepping stones grounded on an unseen obstruction in the river and came to a halt. 30 feet. The Union infantry stood fully exposed on the decks with 30 feet of unknown depth of water separating them from the bank. Fortunately for the Union troops, Bozeman's Confederates were not at their posts. They're most likely still taking cover from the earlier Union bombardment.
Well, they got lucky. Huh?
Right.
Well, leading by example, Captain Stevens pushed his way through the troops and plunged into the water and waded ashore. He said, "Look, boys, the example worked as more than 100 soldiers followed holding rifles above their heads to keep them from getting wet."
Nice.
Meanwhile, Lamson, remaining calm, maneuvered the boat closer to the shore where the rest of the infantry helped unload the howitzers. He's like, dude, we could have just... Stevens and the first 100 that he took with him fixed bayonets and rushed the flank.
You can get him.
The rest of the infantry moved against the rear, right. Bozeman's infantry appeared while Stryblin turned the battery's guns on the attackers. Without ever firing a shot, Getty's infantry reached the fort. The entire garrison at Hills Point surrendered just 10 minutes from the time the infantry had landed.
Serious?
Well, they took them by surprise, man. Since the attackers had not fired a shot, no Confederates were wounded or killed, but all 130 men were captured.
Wow.
Getty suffered 3 killed and 10 wounded, though. Lamson had no casualties, but Cushing suffered 3 killed and 1 wounded in the morning bombardment.
Wow. Within the battery were guns, which had been captured by Stonewall Jackson at Harper's Ferry the previous year.
Hey, look at that, dude. They got their guns back. They're like, nice.
Getty worked quickly to strengthen the post for the inevitable counterattack. Lamson hauled the howitzers into the battery, and Cushing occasionally lobbed shells into the surrounding woods to discourage Confederate troops from forming there.
Right.
Late into the night, Colonel John K. Connolly brought forward inexperienced North Carolina troops. Connolly pushed forward and, wary of attacking an unknown enemy in the dark, had his men lay down, wait for morning. Anxiety got the best of Connolly's troops, and they opened fire, revealing the positions in the darkness, you idiots. Getty returned an accurate fire while Major General Evander M. Law arrived and ordered Connolly to withdraw. He's like, what the hell
are you doing, you idiot?
He's like, I told him not to do anything.
Right. Like, yeah, they fired, idiots. Major General Samuel G. French, which was Longstreet's 3rd Divisional commander, arrived and decided against any further attack against Getty, figuring it would be foolish of the Union troops to remain in their isolated position across the river in enemy territory. So you thought.
Yeah.
Connolly's actions cost 11 wounded and 1 missing.
Idiot.
The following day, General Hood made a reconnaissance, but Getty did not budge and instead was found to be improving and strengthening his post. Colonel Denton was called up from the Suffolk defenses to take command at Hills Point, which now numbered 1,000 troops.
Uh-oh.
April 21st, after long consideration, Getty decided to abandon it. Why? The Confederates reoccupied the point, but it no longer posed a threat.
So it's worthless, basically.
Right, pretty much.
Lamson, discouraged at the removal of the Union troops at Hills Point, Getty's infantry tried 3 times to cross the river, but were turned back each time. While Longstreet had conceded to besiege in the Union Garrison instead of a quicker frontal assault, it did allow his troops to conduct a highly successful foraging campaign in the Blackwater region. Yeah, and it's one of his jobs.
Right.
Suffolk's close proximity to Washington, D.C. allowed for both General-in-Chief Henry Halleck and Secretary of State William Seward to make visits to Suffolk defenses.
Good for them. Halleck actually doing something.
Right. Seward even stayed overnight in Suffolk, and Peck renamed one of his fortresses in his honor.
Oh, good for him.
Nice.
Well, finally, April 30th, Lamson sailors landed on Hills Point and set up pickets. However, around this time, Longstreet began to receive word of Union movements in Northern Virginia under Major General Joseph Hooker.
Yep.
Well, he assumed he would be called on to reinforce Lee, though no orders were issued at the time. Peck also received reports of Union movements and assured Hooker he could hold Longstreet at Suffolk. May 1st, the first day of fighting at the Battle of Chancellorsville, which obviously we'll get to, Hooker insisted to Peck that Longstreet had rejoined Lee, though Peck insisted that he had not left Suffolk yet. None of Longstreet's forces had returned to Lee by this point, but the Confederate foraging wagons began to move back to the north. It was clear at this point that Lee and Hooker were engaged in a major battle, but Longstreet informed Richmond that he would not withdraw until the wagons were safe. May 3rd, the withdrawal orders were given. They said, well, we need you, dude.
Right.
This Chancellorsville is not going good. Early on May 3rd, Getty's division attacked Law's Alabamians. Oh, nice. And captured the first line of Confederate trenches. Wait. Law is supposed to be in red. Right. The fighting produced relatively high casualties while Longstreet decided to continue his withdrawal plans later in the day. Corcoran's front pursued Pickett as he withdrew, but they were unable to catch up to the retreating Confederates. By May 9th, Longstreet had rejoined Lee near Fredericksburg.
Right. Given Longstreet's original objectives, he had completely succeeded in 2 of them, foraging and protecting Richmond.
Right.
The only objective Longstreet completely failed to achieve was the capture of the Federal garrison at Suffolk.
That doesn't matter. They said, if you can.
Right. On the other hand, Union objectives in the campaign had been to hold Suffolk, which they had done. However, while Peck was putting up a defense of Suffolk, his forces were unable to prevent Longstreet from foraging.
Yeah.
It would be fair to say that both sides had achieved several of their primary goals.
Right, clearly.
All right. Peck was commended by Dix for his handling of Suffolk's defenses. The campaign against Suffolk would be Longstreet's first independent command.
Oh, look at that. Longstreet. And you'd failed. Well, not really, though, I guess.
2 out of 3, 6.
All right. Well, that brings us to the Battle of Fort Bisland, which was fought between Union Major General Nathaniel P. Banks against Confederate Major General Richard Taylor during Banks' operation against the Bayou Teche region in southern Louisiana. When Banks was made commander of the 19th Army Corps Department of the Gulf on December 16th, 1862, he was ordered to coordinate an attack against the Confederate bastion of Port Hudson, while Ulysses S. Grant moved against Vicksburg. Banks made preparations for this campaign, but he knew the difficulties he would face on the march there. First, the area from New Orleans was marshy, full of swamps, and disease would be rampant.
Makes sense.
There was also another obstacle in Banks' path, which was General Richard Taylor's small army of the Western Louisiana.
Ooh, small but fierce.
Banks formulated a plan that would take the 19th Corps to Alexandria, securing the Bayou Teche region that was laden with natural forage and unused supplies.
It's the Bayou, man.
He would then establish supply depots along the way and would move from Alexandria against Port Hudson. However, the quick movement he hoped for was slowed by Taylor's small army and a series of attacks beginning with Fort Bisland, located in St. Mary Parish, Louisiana.
Yeah, told you these guys ain't nobody to mess with. When Banks departed Nolens, he planned to capture Taylor's army in its entirety. April 9th, 2 divisions from the 19th Corps crossed Berwick Bay from Brashear City, present-day Morgan City, Louisiana, to the west side at Berwick. April 11th, Banks began his advance in earnest. Taylor was well aware of Banks' advance because of successful scouting by his cavalry under Brigadier General Thomas Greene.
Oh, good for him.
Greene shadowed Banks' army and reported back to Taylor every detail of the maneuvers of the Union Army. April 12th, Banks sent a 3rd Division under Brigadier General Grover up the Atchafalaya River. What the fuck's with the Cuvier and Atchafalaya?
I think it's Cuvier.
Cuvier,
maybe.
Cuvier.
It's like Cuvier, maybe.
Mr. Cuvier!
Hello,
Anyway, he wanted to go up the Atchafalaya River to land in the rear of Franklin. He wanted to get in Franklin's rear.
Well, it's a city.
Right. Intended to intercept the Confederate retreat from Fort Bisland or turn the enemy's position.
Right.
General Taylor sent some of Greene's cavalry to the front to ascertain the enemy's strength and slow his advance.
Yeah, this General Taylor is really a thorn in the side right now.
He's a little angry guy.
He also sent troops under Brigadier General Alfred Mouton to impede the advance of Grover's division. Late in the day, Union troops of Brigadier General William H. Emery's division arrived, formed a battle line outside the Fort Bisland's defenses. An artillery barrage ensued with both sides until dark, when the Federal troops fell back to camp for the night.
Uh-oh.
About 9 a.m., April 13th, Union forces again advanced on Fort Bisland. Banks had 3 brigades in position south of the Bayou Teche. I think I'm saying that right, guys. The brigades were deployed with Godfrey Weitzel on the left, Halbert E. Payne on the right, anchored on the Bayou Teche, with Timothy Ingraham in support. Opposing the Union forces south of the Teche was the Texas Cavalry Brigade, commanded by Brigadier General Henry Hopkins Sibley. Oh, Sibley, huh?
Hey.
North of Bayou Teche was the Union Brigade of Oliver P. Gooding, who faced off against Mouton's Confederate Brigade. Combat did not begin until after 11 a.m. and continued until dusk.
Damn.
In addition to Confederate forces in the earthworks, the gunboat Diana, which had been captured and was now in Confederate hands, shelled the Union troops. Ooh, that's got to be insult to injury, right?
Right.
U.S. gunboats joined the fray in late afternoon. They said, all right.
Shit. By early afternoon, though, fire had halted. Later that night, Taylor learned that the Union division that went up the Atchafalaya and landed in his rear was now in position to cut off a Confederate retreat.
Yep.
Uh-oh. Taylor began evacuating supplies, men, and weapons, leaving a small force to slow any enemy movement. The very next morning, Banks and his men found the fort abandoned. Fort Bisland was the only fortification that could have impeded this Union offensive, and it had fallen.
It's gone.
Seems to happen all the time. Banks continued his march up Bayou Teche. After this initial battle, onward to his ultimate objective of Alexandria, Louisiana. Taylor would slow Banks again a few days later at the Battle of Irish Bend.
Well, and immediately we go to the Battle of Irish Bend, which is also known as Nerson's Woods or Franklin. The Battle of Franklin. Then we already have a Battle of Franklin. Obviously fought between the two people. Sames. Because Richard Taylor's still a thorn in Banks' side right here. Mm-hmm. On the morning of April 13th, Grover's division landed in the vicinity of Franklin and scattered Confederate troops attempting to stop them from disembarking. That night, Grover ordered the division to cross Bayou Teche and prepare for an attack towards Franklin at dawn. Meanwhile, however, Major General Richard Taylor reacted. Oh, shit. He was the first reaction video.
All right.
Feeling the obvious threat to his rear.
Fuck that. Ain't nothing getting in my rear.
Right. He started withdrawing his forces from Fort Bisland, and his advance guard arrived quickly.
Nice.
Morning of April 14th, Taylor and his men were at Nerson's Woods, around a mile and a half above Franklin. Grover's lead brigade marched out a few miles and found Taylor's men on its right, and skirmishing began. The fighting became intense. The Confederates attacked, forcing the Federal soldiers to fall back.
Uh-oh.
The gunboat Diana arrived and anchored the Confederate right flank on the Teche. Still, Grover's men outnumbered the Confederates, and when paused to deploy its full force, Taylor withdrew rather than risk a pitched battle against superior numbers.
Right.
He's like, all I'm here for
Right,
is to piss you guys off.
Right.
Pretty much. While Grover's men had taken the strategic position they sought. This victory, along with the one at Fort Bisland 2 days earlier, assured the success of the expedition into West Louisiana and Alexandria.
Oh.
Look at that, dude.
Well, moving on to the Battle of Vermillion Bayou, or the Battle of Pinhook Bridge. April 17th.
Pinhook Bridge is pretty catchy, but Vermillion Bayou sounds better.
Yeah, kind of cool, man. It all depends on what kind of mood you're in.
Vermillion, wasn't that a name of a outlaw that ran with, or not an outlaw, but a guy that ran with White Earp?
The Vermillion.
Pat Vermillion or something?
Something like that. Anyway, it was fought April 17th, 1863. The third battle in a series of running battles between...
this Richard Taylor guy just won't go
Banks
away,
and
dude.
Taylor, yeah. Yeah. The Confederates were trying to slow down Banks these past few days, and Taylor had a little bit of success, but he was smart enough not to go and engage in full battle because he knew he was outnumbered. Right?
He just wants to slow him down.
Right.
Make him stop for a minute.
And again, they tried to slow him down right outside of Vermillion Bayou.
Well, as Richard Taylor's small army was drawn up the Teche, they crossed the bridge going over Vermillion Bayou, clearly. In order to slow Banks' army down, Taylor's men lit the bridge on fire and stopped for a rest.
Oh, shit.
Banks, who was in pursuit of Taylor, split his army into two columns and sent one towards the bridge and the other column towards around the side. As soon as the first column came within sight of the bridge, Confederate artillery began shelling the Union soldiers.
Damn.
After a while, Union artillery came up and a series of counter-battery exchanges ensued. During the night, Taylor, knowing himself to be outnumbered, as usual again, withdrew his force.
Well, he's smart.
Though Taylor had not dealt Banks a defeat, he was continually slowing Banks down from reaching Alexandria and its ultimate objective of Port Hudson, Louisiana.
Right. And he's doing a good job.
Yep.
Little pesky little sumbitch that he is.
A little pesky little sumbitch he is.
Right. Yes.
That'll leave us off with the Battle of Cape Girardeau next week, as well as the Battle of Grand Gulf, the Battle of Snyder's Bluff, and the Battle of Days Gap, before we reach the ultimate battle so far of the year of Chancellorsville. And all these other battles are taking place at the same time. Chancellorsville's is,
Right.
a couple of them, same time these are going on. So, a lot of stuff to get to. And we're not even in, this is only April, guys. We're not even in the summer yet, where things are about to get hot. Little Taylor, that was like the Taylor and Banks episode there, huh?
Right.
That's going to do it for us. Make sure you're going to patreon.com/bangdang if you want this show in video, as well as early, ad-free. And for $2 a month, you get this show, Outlaws, Gunslingers, and This Week in Sports History. And also go check out the YouTube at Bang Dang Network, And check out our dart series we got going on over there. Other than that, leave a like and review on Spotify or Apple. And we'll be back for 4 more battles next week. We're the Mother Michiganers. Bang, bang.